Good morning, Atlanta. Thank you so much, and welcome to Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butchester, where we enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what I want to do today. Get you fired up about yourself, getting fired up about your choices in life, getting fired up about how to be a successful author and thought leader. So, most anyone can transition themselves from an expert to a thought leader into a narrowly defined space. But it's much easier with organizational support. So I have on my show today Mitchell-Levy. He is the aha guy, and I'll definitely tell you more about that. And he is out of Cupertino, California. That's right, we have a Silicon Valley guy on the show today, and we're going to pick his brain about how we can make it happen. But first, let me tell you more about Mitchell. He is, like I said, the aha guy. That's AHA, that which is a super social self-publishing book platform for those wanting a megaphone. He is an accomplished entrepreneur who has created 20 businesses in the Silicon Valley, including 4 publishing companies that have published over 800 books. Mitchell is an international best-selling author with 58 business books and has provided strategic consulting to over 100 companies. He has advised over 500 CEOs on critical business issues and has been chairman of the board of a NASDAQ-listed company. In addition to these accomplishments, he has been happily married for over 28 years and regularly spends 4 to 5 weeks annually in a European country with his family and friends to be able to relax and relate to your world. Mitchell is committed to being alive, to being joyful, and those aha moments. So without any further ado, let's bring Mitchell on the line. Hello, Mitchell. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh, it is so fun to be talking with somebody as chipper and happy as you are.
Thank you so much for that. And it's so funny, Mitchell, because people tell me that all the time. And I say, it is just a part of my personality. I'm the glass is half full type of person. So I try to just share that, and I can't help it. Sometimes it just oozes out. I tell you, it really does.
Well, somebody who's committed to aliveness and joy, I kind of have that too. So good
yes,
to hear.
I was going to say, I love it. So we should have a really great show today.
Well, it should be fun.
Yes. Now, I know that you are so equipped, and you are so capable, and you are so qualified at teaching us how to do so many things. But I want to kind of focus in on that author part and the thought leader part, if you don't mind, for today's show. And we can definitely
Perfect.
have you back on to really expound about that. But you are able to show people how to not only write that book that has been, swirling around in their minds for quite some time, but not only how to write the book, but how to write that book in 8 hours. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I know that's going to pique someone's interest out there.
Oh, absolutely. And first, though, let's define for a second kind of what type of books we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I spend my energy in the business world, and my job, my role, my focus is to help people be that recognized expert that would allow more people to want to buy from them. So whether or not you call it lead generation or closing business or sales or marketing or whatever the term of the day is, what's important is that expert to be the recognized expert, to be the person who can close business. And so when we're talking books, typically we're not talking fiction, we're not talking kids books, we're not talking cookbooks or poems. We're talking the type of books that allow you to be recognized as the expert at who you are. Now, in that area, we've actually had 300 authors write their books in 8 hours or less.
Wow.
And I know it's so cool. And so first of all, let me say that I've redefined the concept of a book a little bit, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you what that means. Mm-hmm. So there's a platform, and I'm at AhaThat, so it's ahathat.com. So there's a platform where what's interesting when you have a book, or I guess maybe instead of taking what's interesting, let me tell you what's painful for me. Mm-hmm. When, as a publisher, we publish over 800 titles, and every now and then we get this author who's super bright, super capable, and it's been at least 4 or 5 years before we had somebody like this, but they spend all their time writing their book, whether that's 60 hours or 100 hours or a couple hundred hours. Then the book we go through the publishing process. These are more traditional books. And then they publish a book, but they think their job is done. And they don't tell anybody. And so I've had one author who sold 3 copies because that's how many family members he talked to. And it really hurts me to recognize, because this may have been true, 20 plus years ago. It is not true today. 10% of the success of your book is the writing and publishing part. 90% is what you do once your book is on the market. Right? So let's talk about what that means. Is we need to put the book, or at least a piece of the book, or a small enough component of the book in the hands of the people who we have issues with, who have issues who we could solve. That's a better way to put it. Sorry. Okay. So an AHA book for us is comprised of 140 quotes, 140 AHA messages. And those messages are now easily shareable on social media. And the best way to think about a book, or best way to think about the 8-hour process, is we have, now if you actually go to this page today, you're going to see, and you can take a picture of it because it's the old anniversary version, we had a 8-step process on how to author a book. What we're right in the midst of transitioning to is we're going to make those 8 steps 3. Because, I'd be on the radio and I'd be talking to people and I'd say, well, let's talk about our 8-step process, but let me tell you about the first 3 because that's the most important. So by definition, we made the 3 steps, it's a 3-step process. And step number 1 is a Word document. So if you want to do something, you need to answer questions. And that Word document has 4. What's your name? What's your bio? What's a 1-paragraph summary of who you are? But the most important question is question number 1. And so I'm going to tell you how it reads, and then I'll tell you what it means. How it reads is, who is the reader and what is their expectations from the book? Let me tell you what it really means. Who is your prospect and what is their pain point? Right? This is really powerful. I don't know why nobody ever taught me this. Right? When in the past, when you're writing books, what would happen is you'd pick a topic and then you'd want to boil the ocean and solve all these problems and show that you're the person who could solve all of these people's problems. But when you go into business, you have a very narrow niche typically of the customers you're going after. So why don't you think about your existing customers or those you want to grab, your prospects? Think about what is their pain point they have, and that's what you write your book on. Now, guess what happens? Let's fast forward. Your book is done. It's in the marketplace. People go to Google. What do? They Google your name or they Google their problem. And guess what happens? Your book comes up, and it says, solving my problem. Well, they're going to try to figure out who you are to figure out if they should hire you. So that's really what we should be focusing on, is we should be focusing on books that allow us to easily demonstrate we could solve somebody's problem. So step number 2, this will take you 5 minutes, and you can go there today. It's ahathat.com/author. Step number 2 is a single-page PDF. I've curated over 50,000 AHA messages. And so what I decided to do is sit down and give you best practices. And so it's a single-page PDF that you could read on how to write a good aha message, a good, short, compelling quote. And I'll give you an example of one of them that I wrote. This is from a book that I wrote, which is, it's actually called Hey, Did You Aha That? And I interviewed that I wrote that by interviewing 4 of my authors. And so here's the quote. We live in a 7-second soundbite economy. Make it count. Now, that's an aha message. You know why? Because when you hear that, your brain now goes off. First, you may want to fight it and say, oh, no, we don't. And then you go, oh, yeah, we do. And,
oh, yeah, we do.
And so an aha message, the goal of an aha message is to get somebody on the other side to think, to react, to do something. So imagine if you had a book that had 140 aha messages, and you know what? You only need one to capture the attention of the prospect who wants to hire you. All right, so we'll talk about step 3. Step 3 is an Excel spreadsheet which basically keeps track of the character count, because we want our aha messages to be Twitter size, so they're 140 characters or less. And so the spreadsheet's out there for anyone to pick up. So you want to pick up the Word document in the spreadsheet. Anyone can start writing their aha books today. And when we publish, here's the cool part. It goes on a platform called Aha That. There were over 750,000 users today who are looking for content to share. And that's the thing for you guys to think through. If you want social media content to share, if you want to elevate yourself as an expert who knows what's going on in the marketplace, well, go to ahathat.com. It's free to use. It's free to share. And you can look for quotes that are in the field you're in and start sharing other people's content. And just in case you feel bad sharing other people's content, one of the things that we had done is if I call it an atomic thought leader piece, every aha message also gives attribution to the author. So when you share their content, you're getting attribution and you're paying homage to the author, and their fans are recognizing that you're sharing their content. So kind of cool. So that's how we do. That's how we do the 8-hour thing. Well, yeah, I think that's important as well. As you know, because you got a show, and in your show, you share other people's content. That draws more people to you because they want to know, hey, who's she gonna bring on next week?
Right. It seems like it's so smart too, in that you understand that. I may say it one way, you may say it a different way, but each way that it's said is another opportunity for someone to have that aha moment. It's a moment for the nugget to be shared and someone to grasp the wisdom, the understanding, that just to have that moment of, oh, I got it now. I think that we really and truly want people to have those breakthrough moments. And I'm a Twitter person. I love Twitter, so I love the fact that I can retweet someone else's information and, like you said, share the attribute that this is the person that said it. So it's not me, this is this person, and they're awesome. And let's celebrate the fact that they said something that was really thought-provoking and allowed us to get fired up for the rest of the day. And so many things can really be used as a catalyst to get from moment to moment throughout our day. Well, Mitchell, we are down to like the last minute of the show, and I want to make sure that for those that have just joined in, that they are able to get in contact with you. Can you tell us one more time, what are some of the ways that we can follow you or get to you on the internet?
Absolutely. Well, certainly always feel free. My name is Mitchell-Levy, so Mitchell, last name Levy, Levy. I'll hold somewhere between 5 to 6 of the top spots when you Google that name. Feel free to connect me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. If you connect me on Facebook, tell me why, only because there's a 5,000 person split. So I'm happy to connect. I just need to have a good reason. The other way to do it is, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, is go to ahathat.com/author, start filling out the authoring process, and then if you have questions somewhere along the way, you could submit, let's say, the answers to the Word document and 15 aha messages and say, hey, I heard Mitchell on the Dr. Angela show, and I'd love him to give feedback on what I'm doing so far. What do you think? And my team will make sure I get a chance to do that.
Well, listeners, there you go. You can start right there. The important part is that you start. Start, people. Start. We need to go to break. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. Today we are talking business. We are talking books. We are talking leadership, how to be a successful author and thought leader. My guest today is Mitchell-Levy, and he is the That Guy, and he is coming out of the beautiful state of California in the Silicon Valley area. So, Mitchell, when we talk thought leadership, what are some of the top thought leadership practices of today? But, in fact, let me back up a little bit, because there may be someone who says, I don't even know what thought leadership is, Dr. Angela. So can we start with that, and then what are some of the top practices?
Oh, sure. Well, let's start with, so whether or not you've heard the word thought leader or thought leadership bantied around, it is often it's actually a word or phrase that's overused. And what I thought I'd do is I'd answer the question between what it was back when. Now, you could decide that back when was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, and then I'll tell you what it is today. So in the past, and which is say some period of time before, thought leaders were created by either the recording companies or the book publishers. So a recording company would choose who they would want to record and put their record together and do publicity and share it around, or the publisher would decide what book they're going to publish. And then they would do a major marketing campaign to put that in the marketplace. And because there was really one outlet, remember, way back when there were 3 TV channels. So way back when, what would happen is the person who was chosen to be the recording artist, or the group as the recording artist, the individual that was a thought leader, they would get so much recognition that they often would be speaking and everyone would hang on to their words. And often the thought leader would say jump and the audience would say how high.
Right.
Well, as you could tell, life has changed a lot. We have many individuals who are recognized expert in their space, and honestly, we've hit the stage where I don't want to go to a thought leader to ask for help. I want to know what the thought leader is thinking about. What I want to do is I want to go to the person who's an expert who's going to help solve my problem for me, right? So what's interesting is we now want to do business with people we know, like, and trust. We live in a Yelp economy where there's constant feedback about the success that somebody has delivered or not. And so today, what I would call a thought leader, I'd almost say is synonymous with a recognized expert. And so here's a great example. Let's say, you're using email, you're using Gmail, you've got all these emails coming in, and whether or not that's 100 a day, or in my case, not tens of thousands. I probably get a day, probably 7,000 or 8,000 emails. Now, I don't see them all because so many of them get filtered into a bit bucket I never read, right? So, but let's say you're in that situation and you say, I need help sorting through my email. And you just happen to know that one of your friends did something like that, or one of your relatives did something like that. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to call them up. They're going to be your recognized expert. And you're going to say, hey, what did you do? What problem did you have, and how did you solve it? You're not going to send an email to Ann Landers or whatever the thought leader is and say, solve this problem for me. You're going to go directly to a source that you know there's a problem, right? So I think today the important element is to be the recognized expert in the space, in this case, that you solve other people's problems. And just for those that want to see it, I have a website called Thinkaha. It's my consulting website. If you go to thinkaha.com, there is a tab for thought leadership. And on that tab, and this is marketing speak, all marketers have a 2x2. So my 2x2 on that tab, in terms of what a thought leader is, it's audience by content. So audience by content. So if you have a very narrow audience and you have very narrow content, you are by definition unknown. If you have a large audience, but your content is very narrow, I call that an evangelist. It's somebody who spouts the wisdom, and we've had many companies have evangelists where they spout the wisdom of the individual company, but they don't talk about the industry overall. Okay. Now, if you have and this is an interesting point, if you have a reasonably narrow audience, but you have a good amount of content, you're an expert. And what I call a thought leader is the person, I'm going to use my double quote fingers up, when you have the right amount of content for the right audience, you're the thought leader. So I'm going to probably update that slide and say thought leader or recognized expert at the upper right quadrant because I use the word right. If your job is to service Atlanta in whatever you do, well, you don't need to go outside Atlanta. So you could narrow the scope, which is, by the way, really big. So you could narrow the scope of the geographic audience you're going after by saying Atlanta. Well, if you're doing Facebook ads, that'll narrow. You don't need to advertise in other areas of the country or in other places of the world. And so it's the right amount of content you need to share for the right audience. And that's kind of what I think about in terms of thought leadership, and in being an expert. You just have to choose who you're going after and why. Does that make sense?
It does. It really does. So another question, and I have so many questions. I need a longer show. One of the things that I would want to ask is that for so many people, they're listening to these webinars or seminars, and you're told you have a particular idea or you have a particular concept, and you need to be able to market that idea or that concept in different ways. If you're going to do a seminar, you also need to have a CD, you need to have a book, you need to have a workshop, you need to have, all of these things. So I know one of the things that you do is you're able to teach people or make people better understand how to take one piece of something and turn it into so many more things. Can you kind of explain that idea, that concept?
Absolutely. But first, if you don't mind, let me just take a crack at your question, because here's what you said. When you're doing something, everyone's telling you you need to market in all these different formats. You need to create a CD and create a book and create all these other things. And here's what I have to let you know. Don't worry about what the experts say you need to do. And now I'm going to say what you need to do is, what I suggest you do is think about who your audience is, think about who your prospects are, and think about how they are going to consume your answer. Right? So and if you take a look at that consumer base, so based on age, it may decide what medium you go after. Based on diversity, it may decide different platforms that you have to use. So really look at your prospect base and deliver to them and play in the places that they play. That's all. I just wanted to say that because a lot of times people say, hey, do this, and whatever this is, stand on your feet and take a video of you, reciting the alphabet backwards, and it'll go viral. And if your audience is going to find that interesting, great. If your audience is going to find that stupid, well, then don't do it.
Then don't do that. Right. I totally get what you're saying. If your audience, if your demographic is the millennial age group, then do what millennials want to see. You have to put it on the platform that's going to reach them. If you are dealing with seniors, then put it on the places where seniors would be most likely to look for that information. That you have to be smart. It's about the consumer. It's not about what other people have said is necessarily true, but what's true for your demographic. I got it. I understand. Totally understand. Totally. And I hope someone else is out there nodding their heads. And I'm so glad that you explained it that way, because that has become the most true thing for me. I have two very distinct groups of people that very much listen to my show. I have two very distinct groups of people that like me on Periscope or on YouTube, and it's, you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to present the information, the content in a way that's going to make sense to your audience on that particular platform. Totally get it.
So one of the things that's happened in society that's a good representation of what's happening today is the CEO of Uber projected images and acted in a way that was a way in which society was unhappy. Now, in the past, he acted no different than many, many, many other CEOs of the past. However, what happened here is consumer sentiment got so strong, so powerful, that ultimately he was forced to resign as CEO. And there are still people who will not actually take an Uber. They'll take a Lyft instead because they're unhappy with what the CEO did. So that's a very interesting point to make. The consumers and customer service is actually becoming important. Why? Because every company now has, I'm using Yelp as a verb, every company now has a Yelp score. Now, what's going to happen sometime in the not-too-distant future is we're not going to get just a single Yelp score. We're going to have a Yelp score that's relevant to me, relevant to you, right? So when you go and look at an individual or a company, you're going to get the Yelp score of how they interacted with people who were just like yourself, right? And so what does that mean? Well, for a company, instead of looking and interacting with just the quote-unquote recognized influencer today, it's important to make all your employees influencers, because your employees are actually working today and they're in your company. And by the way, just sort of like Zappos that pays its employees to leave if they want to go, you should be happy about the place you work. That's certainly what the millennials want to hear and want to have happen.
Right.
And so companies are going to do a lot better job if they focus on empowering their employees to be successful and empowering them to be spokespeople for the company. Because what happens today is typically at dinner time, the level of conversation at most people's houses, except yours, of course, is people are moaning about their job. Okay? So, and of course, you recognize that would never be you. I recognize that. So, but the interesting part is if you did a great job, if your employees were happy about working there and they were talking positively about the company they worked at, not just to their spouses and family, but to their friends, what does that mean? People are going to want to play with that company. People are going to want to buy from that company because it's a fun place to work. That's where organizations need to recognize the importance, both for retention, but also for actually retention of both employees and customers are going to come from having a better environment. And maybe in the past, companies were able to get away with not doing that, but today they're going to absolutely need to do that because we're keeping track and we're looking at it, and companies are being negatively affected by not doing the right thing for their employees or their customers.
And I think you really hit the nail on the head with that, because you're right. There is the standard is changing. The traditional way of doing things is becoming a little non-traditional, and I think that in some aspects it's a great thing to feel that you are important when you go to work, or that your voice counts for something, and that your team leader really does want to hear how you feel about a particular thing or about your input. That makes people feel valued, and who doesn't want to feel valuable? And I think it would really help on the morale of the company. Like you said, so many people are unhappy. So many people are grumbling when they get home. They're stuck in traffic. As we know, there's nothing like being stuck on the 405 or the 10 or, that major highway that's in your area. And you're thinking, do I really want to keep doing this for a job that I do not like? Do I want to keep doing this for some place that I don't like to go? But if you feel that you're valued and loved and appreciated, then, hey, even though it's only 20 minutes away, but it takes you an hour and a half to get there, it doesn't matter. Put it on your favorite station. Put it on 99.1 WDJY FM Atlanta. Put it on and enjoy your ride into work. I 1000% agree with you on that. Well, listeners, we need to take a very, very short break, but when we get back, we are going to continue with Mr. Mitchell-Levy, the Aha That Guy. But Mitchell, before we go to break, can you remind our listeners where can they find you online?
So my biggest suggestion, go to ahathat.com. And if you're interested in actually writing an AHA book, well, if you go to ahathat.com, there are 41,000 quotes that you can use today for free. Platform's free to use, free to share. If you want to write a book, start following the process. And if you need help, submit what you've got sometime along the way and say that you were on or heard the Dr. Angela show and you'd like Mitchell-Levy to help answer some questions and see if you're moving in the right direction. And I'm happy to do that.
Yes, thank you, listeners. Get started. Get started. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. Today we are talking about how to be a successful author and a thought leader. My guest today is Mitchell-Levy. He is that Aha That Guy. And that's right, he is telling us how to transition ourselves from expert to thought leader in a narrowly defined space. And it is much easier with organizational support. So, Mitchell, how can we really and truly utilize social media? Everybody's on social media. Like I said, I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Periscope and all of that. So how can people make social media work for them, but especially if they don't have a lot of time? So can they do something in like 5, 10, 15 minutes? Or do we need longer than that?
Oh, absolutely. And I just love how you tie threads together. So obviously your audience loves it as well. So let me tell you that social media is actually 2 words, right? So I don't know, I'm being very obvious. And the problem is most people think of social media as 1 word. They hear the word media. And instead of the old school, I mentioned in a previous segment, where there were 3 TV stations. So instead of having 3 TV stations who decided on the content we watched and consumed, now anyone can become a TV station or a radio station and share content. And the downside with that approach is we think social media is media, where we just basically talk about your favorite topic, which is me, right? So if you're talking about you, people run. So here's what's interesting. Okay, put your double fingers in the air, the old Richard Nixon thing, and say social. So social media equals social, and then and add a plus sign, and then put again double fingers in the air, media. So social media is social media. So what that means is you've got to be social. So let me tell you about how you could actually do social media in 5 minutes a day. So wake up in the morning and spend a minute sharing good, compelling content that you like, whether you're retweeting somebody else's content or here's the case where I'm going to say go to ahathat.com. There's 41,000 quotes. Find a book that you like and share 3 quotes, whether or not you're sharing it on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google Plus, or all the above. Spend a minute sharing content. Then put it aside, go away, then come back a couple hours later and spend the other 4 minutes. Or a better way to think about it, 20% of the time should be sharing, 80% should be responding to who touched your content. So if somebody retweeted, say thank you. Or if you don't have a lot, say thank you and who are you? What are you doing these days? If somebody made a comment, respond back, right? So it's really the piece that's relevant and how I've gotten so much of my business with social media. It's just by being social. Right? If somebody responds to your content, that means they're interested in it in some way, shape, or form. Or they know somebody who's interested, and they'll recommend. And so you just have to act like you're human and care about them. Okay? So put your big listening hat on and care about the person on the other side, and all of a sudden they want to engage with you. And that's really where we're heading. We're talking about engagement. And
Right.
so it's not this theoretical number of how many people, making big social media lists and having people interact with you. It's you put out a quote, who touches it and why, and you should know. And so anyhow, that's how you can make social media work for you. Is you basically it'd be very similar if you had a corner store, and people walk by. Well, how nice would it be to stand outside and say hi to people in the morning, right? And shake their hand when they come by. And if you happen to have an interesting piece of news to share the news, and when somebody stops to talk about it, you don't just say, "Oh, wait, I got to tell this person the news." You're going to actually, the person who interacts with you, you're going to talk to them, right? Somebody knocks on your door, a client comes and knocks on your door. What do? Do you ignore it, or do you open the door and invite them in?
Right.
That's all. That's what we're talking about. It's just trying to be a little more thoughtful on the social aspect of social media.
That is such a wonderful reminder. Someone needed to be reminded that it's social media, that it's social, that we are supposed to interact with people, and it's not just an opportunity to spotlight ego, but an opportunity to actually meet and greet and spend time with folks. I love it. Absolutely love it. Now, what is I think that most people nowadays know what an ebook is, so I don't think that we need to explain that. Of course, that's what you guys are reading when you download on Amazon or any of the other platforms. But what is a social media enabled ebook? I'm really curious about that.
So that's kind of what we have with the AHA That platform, and that is something I'm just super excited about. So imagine you have a AHA message that is something you're excited about. Yours would be live life with the glass half full versus half empty. You'll get many more rewards. Okay, so that would be, based on this conversation, that would be my AHA message for you. Okay, so if that was in a social media enabled ebook, and by the way, that's what I want to do with you. I want you on one of my segments. I want to create a book on living life and doing business as a glass half full person and get 4 guests. That's what I want to do with you. So anyhow, we'll talk about that another time. So if we had your quote sitting on our platform, underneath that quote would be the buttons Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+. And any of your fans who get there, including yourself, can actually click on those buttons and share immediately. And so the books that we create initially is a social media enabled ebook where any content in the book is immediately shareable on social media. And that's really cool. And that's what we're excited about. And then of course what we also do, once you write it as a social media enabled ebook, we then can immediately turn it into PDF, Kindle, paperback, and hardcover.
Speaking of the hardback and all of that, so many people, when they think book, they still think of a very traditional hardback book. And we know that now, thanks to the wonders of technology, we're now able to have the ebooks. So how do we make a physical book as well as the ebook? How do we make that a part of our leadership platform? Is there something special that we need to do as this thought leader or as this expert? Is there a difference between the two?
So I as thought leaders and experts, no, you have to do the same. What people often do is they may create a book and then they think the world knows about it, and all they have to do is written it once, and everyone is so excited that they wrote their book that they instantly know about it. And that just isn't the case. And so what's important is to make sure it's shared. Here's an interesting thing. So we have a social media enabled ebook platform. Any one of those AHA messages that we create can include a URL. And when we do a book for an existing book, basically we're pulling out think of it this way. An AHA book is the Evelyn Wood speed reading of the book itself. Okay. Right? Because you go in, you're picking the best points possible, and then any one of those AHA messages can include a URL to point to the book for sale on Amazon, or point to the top of the funnel where you're actually looking for the content, or point to YouTube, or point to your Blog Talk radio station, right? And so now, so here's the interesting part. Many times people come to me and say, oh, I don't need an AHA book. I already have a book. And then I ask the question, well, how are you doing social media marketing? Oh, I hire somebody else to do that. And so by definition, they're not being social in their social media marketing, okay? And secondly, they don't recognize the important element of making it easy. Here's what, if before, in a previous segment, we had a conversation. You put the tools together and you play in the playground that your customers or your prospects are playing in, right? Okay. The other thing you want to do is, if they actually like you, if you go in their playground and they like you, you got to make it easy for them to share your content.
Right.
And giving them a single book and saying, hey, read this, pick out the quotes you like, and then manually type them into this content, and find images and then automatically share them. They're not going to do that. So the interesting part with the AHA That platform is you're potentially playing in the playground that your prospects are interested in and making it easy for them to share your content. And that's really what's different. That's what you want to work on, is you've got to make it easy for the people who want to get to know, like, and trust you to be able to do that, and to be able to encourage their other fans to be involved as well.
I like how you say you have to make it easy. Don't make it so difficult. And everyone is familiar with the wonderful KISS acronym. Keep it simple. Make it easy. Social media is an incredibly powerful tool, and I'm so glad that you reminded everyone that we need to put the social part of it back in the whole of it all, because I think we're forgetting to do that. Now, what if someone says that I really like what I'm doing. I like what you're doing. What you're saying is really, really great, but I'm still not quite sure. We have about 2 minutes left in the show. What are some last-minute nuggets that you can share that will allow someone to really make the decision that this is a great move for them?
Oh, sure. Well, feel free to go to ahathat.com or go to ahathat.com/author and start watching the videos and start looking at how other people have interacted with this platform and how they use it. And then if you get really stuck, a lot of times what we ultimately do is we'll figure out how to do a strategy session with a person to talk about what this means for them. As a matter of fact, I've got one coming up any minute now. So if I got to run, it's because we've got the next one is being scheduled. We have a slight overlap here. And so I think the interesting part is there is no one easy answer that solves everything, right? You've got to experiment. You got to practice. You got to use. The benefit of the AHA That platform is if you could write a book in 8 hours or less, or what we like to do now, our go-to-market strategy, is we'll do a 2-hour interview with somebody, and then the team will ghostwrite the book. So if you could identify a target market you're going after, spend 2 hours doing the interview, have somebody ghostwrite a book for you from there, basically your content, your AHA messages, it's kind of the Evelyn Wood speed reading of your brain of how you solve your prospects' issues. And then you could almost immediately go to market and see if it works, see if it's sticky, see if there's traction. Right. And then if it works, then you spend more time, money, and energy on it. If it doesn't work, you go after another market. And that's kind of what's happened in the past, is books have not been part of the overall marketing strategy because it's taken so long to create. Now what's happened is we are largely helping people integrate both social media and books into their marketing strategy. And the ultimate goal is to get the prospect on the other side to say, aha, I'm interested in getting to know you and hopefully doing business with you.
Mitchell-Levy, everyone. Mitchell, thank you so much for sharing and being on the show with me today.
Dr. Angela, you're awesome. My pleasure.
Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you for joining me on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I hope to see you back here Mondays, 10 a.m. I hope that you can join me. We will empower, inspire, and enlighten you. Until next time, everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.